Alright, yeah, welcome back. So this is going to be Unit 3, Day 6. Some reminders before we get started. Make sure you have your history notebook out and taking notes as you move through the video. Make sure you're completing the vocabulary for this video, either highlighting them in your notes or writing them down individually. So let's go ahead and get started for today. So our key terms for today are Congo, Henry Stanley, Battle of Adowa, Shaka Zulu, Tropical Dependencies, Settlement Colonies, White Man's Burden, Social Darwinism, Berlin Conference, South Africa, Boer Republics, Great Trek, Australia, New Zealand, the Maori, and the Xhosa cattle killings. Key concepts of today is African colonization in the 19th century, Berlin Conference and the scramble for Africa, types of colonial governments in Afri-Asia, changing interactions between natives and Europeans at the end of the 19th century, British colonialism in Africa and the Pacific, causes and effects of imperialism in South Africa, and the effects of imperialism in Oceania. So, let's talk about some resistance first, because not everyone's going to take to the Europeans coming on their home, and they're really going to resist. So, Henry Stanley is going to conquer the Congo, which is a free state of Zaire for Belgium. Now, the Congo is about half the size of the continental United States, so it's this huge landmass, right? And since they technically cannot have slaves, they just use this super coercive form of labor. Now, the biggest export for the Congo is rubber. So, what the Dutch will do is that if the population did not get enough rubber, they would chop off the hand of the person, right? So that you drain faster. They'll kill your family if you resist at all. And again, this was kind of a joint stock company, or was a joint stock company. And this would be the first international backlash of something happening. And eventually the entire Congo will now be governed directly by Belgium. Kind of other kind of resistance is that when Italy invades Ethiopia in 1896, the Ethiopians will defeat the Italians straight up. At the Battle of Adowa, Ethiopia will win, and Ethiopia will remain the only independent country in Africa for a while. Now, we also have the Zulu Wars. These happened in the 1870s, and the British and the Boer, or the Dutch, they seek land. The Zulus resist. And the Zulus will eventually defeat the British in the Battle of Ishanawana. But it's one battle, but it's too little to win the war, and eventually the British will defeat the Zulus. Now, in South Africa, we have a South African priestess of the Xhosa people, and she has a spiritual vision that if the Africans kill all of the cows in what is known as the Xhosa cattle killing, the British will leave. And they were kind of right. But it leads to a famine of 1856 to 1857. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 to 400,000 cows were killed in this great killing. And it does drop the population from 120,000 people to 20,000 British people. It does work, but it doesn't completely remove the British from the area. Now, she is arrested but released because, she didn't break any laws, technically. But this is known as the Xhosa cattle killings. Now, there are two patterns of dominance in these two types of colonies. The first type of colony is known as a tropical dependency, and then the second type of colony is a settlement or settler colony. Within settlement colonies, there are two types of patterns: white dominions and contested settler colonies. Now, let's talk about tropical dependencies. Now, tropical dependencies are going to be the models most like the ones established in India and Java, where there's going to be a few Europeans who govern the masses of the indigenous people. They're going to exploit religious and ethnic divisions to keep the people fighting amongst themselves. They're normally going to rule through the one tribe, the most powerful tribe. You know, again, the few Europeans are going to govern the masses with the help of Western educated African Asian subordinates. In Africa, unlike other colonized regions, education is left in the hands of missionaries rather than the states. The reason they do this is because in India and Southeast Asia, they set up, government schools and government-funded schools, but the people were getting educated and the people were fighting back, so they do not do that in Africa, leading to like a big stunted growth of the African middle class. Right? This was intentionally to eliminate the development of nationalistic leaders, and this is to isolate groups within colonized people. So it's really it was calculated to kind of stop people from rebelling. Now, the other type of settlements, we have colonies. We have settlement colonies, and these are going to be white dominions. Now, what is white dominion? A white dominion is going to be where the area is majority white people. Examples of this is 13 colonies, Australia, and Canada, where you would say 95 to 98% of the population that is there are white people. Then you have contested settler colonies, where this is normally like 50-50, 40-60 white people and indigenous people. This is going to be Kenya, New Zealand, South Africa. Right? But and these are, again, they're like 50-50. But this is the white Europeans are going to consider themselves higher than the indigenous populations. Now, after 1850, Europeans in Asia and Africa are going to isolate themselves. And they're also going to allow more European women into the colonies. Before 1850, it was majority men who would go to colonies and set up colonies. So during this time, we also have the kind of development of white racial supremacy, or the idea of white racial supremacy with the white man's burden. Now, the white man's burden is kind of racially kind of justification for the white Europeans kind of conquering and kind of colonizing the rest of the world. What it basically means is that the indigenous people are not capable of taking care of themselves, that they're dangerous, that it's up to the Europeans to educate them and take care of them and lead them, and it's just a super kind of racially motivated justification for colonization. And again, it's not right. And this is the true development of social Darwinism. Right, here's some pictures of kind of this white man's burden at, in propaganda. Right now, the Dutch in South Africa, in the 17th century, the Dutch are going to occupy Cape Town, Providence. They're going to create a settler colony based off ranching and slavery. Well, the British, annex Cape Town. And what is this going to do? Well, this is going to lead the Dutch farmers, because they don't want to be part of the British, they're going to move north from the South African to the interior, away from the British. The result of this, right? While they don't, they can't permit slavery, they do establish crazy racial segregation, such as apartheid. This directly leads to the South Africa. Now, gold and diamonds and other natural resources are going to lead at Britain to seek control of the Boer Republics, which is just the Dutch, and they're going to fight the Dutch in what is known as the Boer War. Now, the Union of South Africa is a British federal crown dominion in 1910, united all the states to create one kind of colony. This is going to be an extremely segregated, casted society with miscegenation laws, meaning that you can't intermarry racially. Racial segregation, such as apartheid laws, are put in place. Many Africans are converted to Protestantism. Europeans are going to dominate every single level of government and economy. And they're going to be heavy mining of gold, diamonds, lead to industrial capitalism. This is just going to create a kind of vicious cycle of abuse and colonization practices that's really going to be super detrimental to South Africa, and we can even see the effects of today with the effects of apartheid. Now let's talk about Australia. Now, the early settlement of Australia takes place between 1836 to 1863 with South Asia, New Zealand, Victoria, and Queensland, and the Northern Territory respectively. All kind of becoming colonized. Again, it was originally kind of a prison colony, but it will eventually, in the 1850s, will lead to massive immigration due to gold rushes and, natural resources, and suddenly the world's getting in a big hurry, so they need all of these new things. By 1901, Australia is granted Dominion status, meaning that they, are truly, they're still government, but they're still under control of British, but there's a lot of self-government involved. Now let's talk about New Zealand for our last one. Now, the indigenous people of the Maoris, this is going to occur in the late 18th century. Exposure to disease and firearms and conquering resulted in massive population loss for the Maoris. By the middle of the 1800s, the surviving Maoris had begun to establish sedimentary agricultural communities. They kind of really brought... they kind of acculturated themselves to the European ideologies, meaning that they kind of adapt to the British control in order to survive. Now, Europeans are going to seize the most fertile lands. Maoris driven to the interior of the island. But overall, New Zealand was able to construct a multiracial society in which elements of the Maori culture flourished. Many of the Maori culture is still very apparent in a lot of the aspects of New Zealand today, even in soccer or football. There's a lot of Maori culture still alive and well in New Zealand. So the spread of Christian missionaries in Africa. And we have South Africa. Kind of the specific empires. And that's where we're going to end for today. Thank you guys. Make sure you're following along with the notes and your completed vocabulary. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys in class.